This is your coffee break on the HAN network. I'm Kate Czaplinski with the latest local news today, including ongoing major delays on Metro North, a traffic stop in Stratford that yielded $1 million in heroin, and much more. Later in the show, we talked with Dr. Aaron Krasner of Silver Hill Hospital in New Canaan as part of Mental Health Awareness Month. We discussed teenagers and when parents should consider seeking professional help for their teens, whether they have mental health or addiction issues. Of course, Rob Adams will have your forecast and a Nutmeg sports update, and Donald Eng will take a look back on this day in history. But first, on to the news. Commuters are facing extremely crowded trains and delays after a fire damaged Metro North tracks in Harlem on Tuesday. Regular service is not estimated to return until Friday at the earliest, according to MTA spokesman Aaron Donovan. The fire, which Donovan specified was not actually on the tracks but at a business under the tracks, was underneath all three commuter lines. According to a report broadcast by CBS News from the New York Fire Department chief, the fire call came in at about 6:45 at night, and the fire department was on the scene in 4 minutes. The fire destroyed the center as well as approximately 10 cars in the area. The 4-alarm blaze was hot enough to pop bolts out of steel. At 8:37 a.m. this morning, Metro North said that customers traveling into and out of Grand Central Terminal may experience delays of up to 30 minutes due to congestion in the vicinity of the Harlem 125th Street. The Saturday schedule is in effect on New Haven, Harlem, and Hudson lines. And in other news today, an 84-year-old man died in a one-car accident on Bridgeport Avenue in Shelton last night. Police said that Joseph Connor of Shelton crashed in the area of 829 Bridgeport Avenue just before 8 at night. He was transported to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The cause of that accident remains under investigation, but you can get updates at sheltonherald.com. A state police traffic stop in Stratford Tuesday afternoon yielded $1 million worth of heroin. State troopers from Troop G in Bridgeport conducted a traffic stop on a Toyota Camry for what they called a moving violation on Route 15 northbound in Stratford. Investigation and help from a Trumbull police canine led to the discovery of 11 packages of suspected heroin within the vehicle. The operator, 50-year-old Jose Adorno of Chicago, Illinois, was arrested. The total amount of heroin seized was nearly 28 pounds. Adorno was charged with possession of over 1 kilogram of heroin and possession of over 1 kilogram of heroin with intent to sell. He was being held on a $1 million bond and is scheduled to appear in court today. The street value of his heroin is estimated to be more than $1 million. And the parents of a Shelton High School senior who was killed in a car crash back in February are upset that they will not be receiving an honorary diploma at the school's graduation this year. Rather, a diploma will be given out at an awards dinner. The family is not pleased with that decision, according to the Shelton Herald. 17-year-old Edmund Conklin died in a rollover crash on Bridgeport Avenue earlier this year. He was the starting center for the school's basketball team and a lover of video games, according to his family. His parents, Barbara and Ed Conklin, said they've been trying to accomplish the task for more than 2 months of getting him an honorary diploma, but haven't been able to come to an agreement with the Board of Ed, which ultimately decides whether the diploma is awarded at the ceremony. Barbara Conklin said she spoke with Mayor Mark Loretti, who said he didn't see an issue with awarding the family an honorary diploma at graduation. Conklin also said she has gone to local radio stations raising awareness of the situation, and several petitions have been started in support of the family's wishes, gaining a lot of attention. Shelton Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Chris Clowett, said the district has been working with the family since the accident occurred and decided to award the family an honorary diploma at the annual senior award ceremony. Clowett said that on May 11th, our attorney sent Conklin's family an offer to give the family an honorary diploma in Edmund's name at our prestigious senior awards night. The superintendent said, "We have not heard back from him, so we do not have a tradition of giving honorary diplomas. We are, however, willing to honor Ed as well as Christian Noge, a student who was killed in his sophomore year, and that both of them will be receiving honorary diplomas at the awards ceremony." Much more on that story at sheltonherald.com. And at 3:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, the Fairfield Police Department received a report of a boater in distress just outside the South Benson Marina Channel. The Fairfield Police Marine Unit responded and located the boater and his vessel. The vessel was found to be taking on water and was towed by the Fairfield Police boat to the boat launch ramp at the marina. According to officials, the swift response and actions by the Fairfield Police Department's Marine Unit ensured the safety of the boater and prevented further damage to the boat. And justice for the murder of Trumbull native Kevin Sutherland, who was slain in Washington, D.C. last July, will have to wait, potentially until the end of 2017. That was the result of a grand jury indictment hearing last Tuesday, May 10th in Washington, and an arraignment for Sutherland's murderer, Jasper Spires, last Friday, May 13th. Sutherland, the 24-year-old Trumbull native, was stabbed to death on a metro train during a violent midday robbery attempt. He had been on his way to Philadelphia for a July 4th celebration. U.S. Attorney Channing Phillips announced last week that Spires, 19 years old, was indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder and other charges stemming from the brutal stabbing of Sutherland, who was a graduate of American University. Spires, a Washington, D.C. native who was 18 years old at the time of the incident, rejected a plea deal on April 8th that would have resulted in a 30-year prison sentence with no probation. Kevin's father, Doug Sutherland, told the Trumbull Times that the plea deal was offered to him in March and it would have taken off all the other charges. There were 7 in total. Sutherland and his wife Teresa told the Times that they were satisfied with the terms of the plea deal after working with prosecutors. If convicted when the case finally goes to trial, Spires could serve life in prison. Well, we're going to switch gears now and throw it over to Rob Adams for a look at the forecast. Rob?
Kate, good morning. We've got a partly sunny day, high near 68, with the wind out of the northeast from 8 miles per hour, becoming southeast in the afternoon. Should be a very nice day, mostly cloudy and 48 for tonight, with the wind out of the southeast around 6 to Thursday. A slight chance of showers between noon and 3 tomorrow, then a chance of showers and thunderstorms later in the day, partly sunny and 67 for the high. Chance of precipitation 30%. Thursday night, more of that to about 7 o'clock and then partly cloudy afterwards with a low around 49. Sunny and 72 for Friday to Saturday. Chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly sunny rather, and 68 for the high. Sunday, mostly cloudy, 68, partly sunny and 69 for Monday. And Tuesday, a chance of showers, mostly cloudy, and a high near 68 degrees. Westport is 69, Danbury has 62, excuse me. Danbury has 59, transposing my numbers, and Shelton has 64 degrees, Kate.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. Well, we're going to step out for a break, and when we come back, Donald Ing takes a look back on this day in history. Rob has a Nutmeg Sports Update, and we have some more news coming up after this.
It's time to come back to hometown banking, where people are taken into account, not just balances, where community comes first. A place where there's more than one kind of interest, where automation will never replace consideration, where they not only know your name, they know your dog's name too. It's time to expect more. It's time to bank well. Bank smart. Bank local. Bank well.
Had a sports injury or a slip and fall that needs immediate care? Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care gives you direct access to an orthopedic specialist fast without an appointment. Biking, golf, tennis, soccer, whatever the sports injury is, sprain or fracture, Coastal Ortho Express can help. Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care open Monday through Saturday in the iPark building at 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk, or go to coastalorthoexpress.com. That's coastalorthoexpress.com. Like them on Facebook.
A Better View Window Cleaning Plus has been cleaning glass all over Connecticut for over 20 years. They also specialize in cleaning chandeliers, mirrors, skylights, tiles, and will power wash anything that needs cleaning. They hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and are fully insured and bonded. When you deal with a Better View, you're dealing with the best, not the rest. Call today for a free estimate, 203-284-8836, or visit them online, abetterviewcleaning.com.
Hi, I'm Rob Adams with my good friend Donald Eng, and we're the home team for Nutmeg Sports, Monday through Wednesday at 2 o'clock right here on the HAN Network. We are the place for all things Connecticut sports, so come hang out with us on Nutmeg Sports. Don? They don't call him the best color man in the game for nothing. Nutmeg Sports, 2 o'clock, Monday through Wednesday, right here on the HAN Network.
We're back on this Wednesday edition of Your Coffee Break on the HAN Network, and it's time to throw it over to Donald Eng for a look back on this day in history. Check it out.
The Western landscape is reshaped in an instant. First, though, to 1756, the 7 Years' War begins when Great Britain declares war on France. This was the most destructive war since the 30 Years' War, the previous century. Those two sides fight so many times, they really run out of names before them. In North America, the 7 Years' War was called the French and Indian War after the two enemies against Great Britain. To 1860, Abraham Lincoln wins the fledgling Republican Party's presidential nomination over New York Senator William Seward, who later becomes Secretary of State. Seward entered the convention as the favorite, but his connections to the more radical anti-Catholic wing of the party concerned many delegates, and his attempts to move to the center then alienated his supporters. Lincoln's supporters argued that the Illinois congressman was best positioned to carry the West, which was essential to a Republican victory, and they persuaded just enough delegates to switch their votes. Seward decisively won the first ballot, but didn't get enough support to win the nomination outright. The Pennsylvania delegates then threw their support behind Lincoln on the second ballot, resulting in a virtual tie, and Seward's support collapsed on the third ballot. Did you think brokered conventions were a new thing? Anyway, now we go, finally, to 1980 for this.
There was this terrific, very vigorous vertical eruption column that was the stem of the mushroom or the toadstool that then blossomed out at greater height. And for most of the morning we saw this tremendous ash cloud roiling out toward the northwest, and I can only assume that that was coming off of the big pyroclastic flows that were going off in that direction that later built the pumice plain. It was a very eventful morning, but it was sobering because I remember thinking up in the airplane that Dave just couldn't have survived this, especially when we got around to the west side and saw all this ash headed in.
That, of course, was the eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington State, releasing the energy equivalent of 1,600 Hiroshima atomic bombs, sending an ash cloud 14 miles into the air. Ash would fall on 11 U.S. states. Between 54 and 60 people died in the eruption, including Geological Survey volcanologist Dave Johnston. That is the Dave that they were worried about there. He'd been manning an observation post 6 miles from the eruption, and the reason for the death toll being not exactly known is because after the explosion, Phil Hyatt and Dale Thayer were listed among the missing. Investigators later located men named Phil Hyatt and Dale Thayer alive and well, but they had no way of knowing who had reported them missing and couldn't confirm that the two men were the Phil and Dave they were trying to find. Those two still officially listed as missing in the eruption. That is your daily look back in history, and I am the most certainly not missing Donald Eng.
Thanks as always to Don. Now it's time to throw it back over to Rob Adams for a Nutmeg Sports Update. Rob?
All right, thank you, Kate. Good morning once again, everyone. Let's start in girls lacrosse. AJ Simonowski and I saw a good one yesterday at Greenwich High School. It was the final game of the regular season for both Ridgefield and Greenwich as we take a look at yesterday's highlights. From Cardinal Stadium in Greenwich, it's high school girls lacrosse. Caitlin Young across the way for the Greenwich Cardinals. An interesting conversation with Coach Berger as this is thrown down and Greenwich gets the early goal. Tried it a couple of times. She said, let me just spell it for you. Off to the far side it goes.
Something I know all too well.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Tigers with a good look. They're able to tie it right back up. That was way too easy. All the way out goes McMullen. She makes the turn. Little collision there. This is thrown down and a goal. Low scoring, but kind of interesting, kind of fun. 3-2 at the half. Making her move, Villamur. Couldn't get a good look on net. And of course you're dealing with Maddie Burns in the goal. Down goes to Winter. And able to get it to 4-3. Hence night game. 7 o'clock, that at Trumbull High School. Bouncer on net. And able to throw it home. Ann Hage makes it a 5-3 game. The junior looking to put the Tigers up 3.
And she does. A bouncer gets past Schultz, 6-3. The senior day here at Cardinal Stadium for these Greenwich lacrosse players. Down low, up top, O'Gorman. It's a one-goal game at 6-5. Waits on the whistle, there it is, makes the approach, throws it, and it bounces in. Deliberately working for overtime, maybe. Sterling walk up, almost stole it, but instead it's O'Gorman to tie it. Under 1 to go, we're knotted at 7. 6.5 to go. The move, thrown along, back behind with 3. Ball loose with 1, and we're going to overtime. McMullen and Claire Lochran connecting. Down she goes, thrown down, and she scores! The final score, Ridgefield 8, Greenwich 7.
So really, what a game yesterday. 8-7 the final score. Caitlin McMullen's goal 20 seconds into overtime was the difference as Ridgefield gets the 1-goal overtime win. The Cardinals rallied with Maggie O'Gorman scoring her 4th of the day with under a minute to play, but McMullen's 6th goal was the game winner. As you get a look at the rest of the scoreboard, it was Danbury over West Hill 13-6. Ward did the same to St. Joseph 13-6. Darien doubled up Wilton 12-6. Longmeadow, Massachusetts by 8 over New Canaan 14-6. So the playoffs in girls lacrosse in the FCAC are all set now. Number 8 Ludlow will be at number 1 Darien. These are all games scheduled for Friday. Number 7 Norwalk will go to Dunningfield and take on number 2 New Canaan. Number 3 Ridgefield will host the 6th seed Ward, and the 5-4 game will be the Wilton Warriors at the Greenwich Cardinals. We move back to the boys lacrosse scoreboard now, and it was Ludlow all over Trinity Catholic 19-1. Colin Minikis scored 4 times. Darien by 22 over Stamford. Brookfield a 1-goal win over St. Joseph. Danbury 11, Norwalk 8. Greenwich beat Trumbull 16-10, and Ridgefield over New Canaan 7-3 in a big win for Ridgefield. So the FCAC playoffs will be fascinating. We'll talk about that more on Nutmeg Sports later on. Baseball, Central over Whitney Tech 10-1. Vinny DeRubius had 2 hits for Trumbull as they beat Darien 5-2. St. Joseph over Seymour 10-3. Neil Velasquez had a homer and drove in 3 runs. He had a double as well. To softball, Norwalk all over McMahon, and it was Staples beating New Canaan 8-3. From boys tennis, shutout wins for Danbury and Ward, while Staples got a 6-1 decision over Weston. In girls tennis, it was Staples over Weston 4-3 and shutouts for West Hill and Ward. Now to boys golf, as Bobby Osborne fired a 35 for medalist at the Par 36 Country Club of Darien, a 7-shot win for the Blue Wave over the Rams. West Hill by 2 over Ward. Ridgefield got a 6-shot win over Greenwich, and it was Danbury over Wilton. Over to girls golf, a big win for Staples over Danbury, while Greenwich took it to Ridgefield, and Darien all over Ludlow. To boys volleyball, Greenwich shut out St. Joseph 3-0. Now to today's schedule, and first and foremost for us here on the HAN Network, it's Staples at Danbury at 4 o'clock in baseball. Winner goes into the FCAC playoffs, the loser gets to think about the state playoffs, but more baseball for the winner out of this game, at least from an FCAC perspective. But first, let's go to the FCAC girls tennis quarterfinals, because you've got number 8 Trumbull at number 1 Darien, number 2 Staples hosting number 7 Wilton, the 6th seed Ward is at number 3 New Canaan, and number 4 Greenwich hosting number 5 Ludlow. Baseball, we mentioned Staples and Danbury. That's here on the HAN Network at 4 o'clock as Kevin Coleman and Justin Galanti join me for the call. New Canaan is at Greenwich, Central home for West Hill, Ridgefield is at Stamford, Ludlow at McMahon, it's St. Joseph at Trinity Catholic, Trumbull home for Bunnell, and Norwalk is at Wilton. The softball schedule is Danbury at Staples, Central at West Hill, Ridgefield home for Stamford, McMahon at Ludlow, Trinity is at St. Joseph, Darien home for Trumbull, Wilton at Norwalk, and Greenwich at New Canaan. McMahon is at Staples in boys lacrosse, Ward is at Ludlow, and you've got St. Joseph home for Amity in girls lacrosse. All of these games, for the most part, ending the regular season around the FCAC. You've got boys outdoor track and field and girls outdoor track and field, as it's West Hill at Stamford. Abbott Tech is at Norwalk in boys tennis. In girls tennis, it's Norwalk at Abbott Tech and Danbury at New Fairfield. We've also got boys golf and girls golf on the docket, and boys volleyball as well. So a big, true final day of the regular season, with some games leading into tomorrow. Maybe there's even a game on Saturday, believe it or not, after the playoffs start. But this is really the big end of the regular season right here, and we'll have baseball later on, as well as Nutmeg Sports with sports. I'm Rob Adams. Kate, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. Well, getting back to some more news today. In Milford, 2 people were arrested after a fight that started outside a motel room and ended in a drugstore parking lot. The 2 people, one from Milford and the other from New Milford, were at the Howard Johnson's Hotel when a verbal argument escalated into a physical altercation. According to Officer Joseph Dempsey, police went to the Boston Post Road Hotel around 8:30 at night Tuesday. He said the fight started outside a hotel room and moved into the nearby Walgreens parking lot. Police broke up the fight and arrested the man and woman, who were both 22 years old. Michael Cholkovs of Brookside Trail in New Milford was charged with second-degree breach of peace, third-degree assault, second-degree strangulation, as well as resisting arrest. Ashley Mumau, who gave the same address as the hotel, was charged with breach of peace, assault, and violation of a protective order. And in other news today, Secretary of State Denise Merrill and the Department of Motor Vehicles Commissioner Michael Basra announced today a first-of-its-kind plan to develop a streamlined motor voter system that will automatically register to vote those eligible citizens who go to the DMV for license or state-issued identification card services. The 2 agencies also plan a number of other important activities in DMV offices to improve the voter registration process, which will modernize the state's execution of the Federal Motor Voter Act. Connecticut will be the first state in the nation to introduce automatic voter registration through this type of agreement. And the Ridgefield Library and Dr. Daniel Cameron of the International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society will offer a physician's insights into the complex experience Lyme patients often face on Wednesday, May 25th at 7 o'clock. The patient perspective will be represented by author Allie Cashel. Cashel's book, Suffering the Silence, explores the value of telling and sharing the patient's story and recovering from diseases such as Lyme. The program is part of Building a Model Community Response to End Lyme Disease, a new initiative developed by Ridgefield-based Lyme Connection Smart Revenue and the Ridgefield Library with support from the Western Connecticut Health Network. You can get more information at ridgefieldlibrary.org. Well, we're going to step out for a break, and when we come back, we have an interview with Dr. Aaron Krasner talking about teens dealing with serious mental health issues and when it might be time to seek professional help. Don't miss it. That's coming up next after this.
For more than 50 years, Triple S has been Fairfield County's expert service for carpet, upholstery, and drapery cleaning. We provide the best in repairs and in-depth restoration, understanding fabrics and how to properly clean and restore them. Our staff will come to your home to clean your wall-to-wall carpet to perfection. We can also pick up your fine carpets and bring them to our facilities with locations in Norwalk, Stamford, and Stratford. Triple S will get the job done fast, big or small. At Triple S, you can count on our people as well as our cleaning. Find us at triplesclean.com or 203-847-8000.
Walter Stewart's Market in New Canaan is your time-saving local shopping destination for the best of spring. Find many of your favorite products, from great specials on everyday items to the freshest organic produce, artisanal cheeses, and grass-fed steaks. Drop off your knives to be sharpened, grab a beautiful bouquet of spring flowers, and stop in next door for a wine tasting. Plus, their personable staff is always ready to lend a helping hand. So stop in to Walter Stewart's Market, 229 Elm Street today, or shop online at stewartsmarket.com.
Can't wait for it to get warmer so you can start fishing again? Get over to the Dock Shop, where they have the latest in fishing tackle, marine electronics, boating supplies, and more. But remember, the Dock Shop isn't your average tackle shop. You'll also find the finest selection of nautical apparel, jewelry, home decor, and gifts in New England. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the New England coast, this is a unique place to shop. The Dock Shop, 51 Tokenique Road, Darien, 609 Riverside Avenue, Westport, dockshop.com.
You are watching the HAN Network, and you're not alone. Nearly 500,000 viewers enjoyed our broadcasts in the first 5 months. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Jessica Murrin, Advertising Director, at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
I'm Kate Czaplinski for the HAN Network. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're looking to raise awareness and start a conversation here at Silver Hill Hospital in New Canaan. I'm joined right now by Dr. Aaron Krasner, who is the Adolescent Transitional Living Service Chief. Dr. Krasner, we've had you on before, and we're happy to have you back.
It's really great to be here. It's always fun.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a very important topic. When is it time to seek professional help for your teen, which can be something difficult to figure out? One of the reasons being, teens go through emotional mood swings. So how do you differentiate between a mood swing and something more serious?
Yeah, that's the question. It's a question that I think is really important for parents to be educated about. And what I hope your viewership, listenership, readership, the ships can learn from this is a concept of impairment. So all of us go through moods, difficult times, fatigue. Various factors can impact our moods and make us brittle in a particular day, moment, spot, even a couple days. When these symptoms prolong and or when the moodiness is very, very intense, it can lead to impairment. And impairment is when you can't do the stuff that you're supposed to do. So teens are supposed to go to school, they're supposed to do their activities, they're supposed to do their homework, they're supposed to have friends and have somewhat normative relationships with their parents. And when these important hallmarks are impacted negatively by symptoms and cause kids to struggle in making good on their obligations as teenagers, then there's a sign that there's a problem, and more specifically, there's a sign that there's an illness process. And it's important to remember that problems are problems and illness is illness, and that's why I'm talking about impairment. So when problems accumulate, they hint at and can ultimately define a clinical syndrome, which represents a brain-based illness that can be treated and must be treated. That line can be very blurry for certain people in certain cases, and there are lots of different factors for us as parents. Some of us want to get help for our kids, some of us don't. Some of us want to acknowledge that there's a problem, some of us don't. And so there are some objective measures. If your kid's not going to school, that's something to look at. If your kid is persistently irritable or sad, and your kid is persistently uninterested in the things that he or she used to like to do, those are the two most important symptoms of depression. And if they are prolonged, that is a reason to seek help, or at least a consultation. A good place to start is a pediatrician.
And now this kind of goes along with that, but often teens want to be left alone. But when can that kind of raise a red flag for intervention?
Yeah, being left alone is an important thing for many of us. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. And when you're an introvert, being alone can recharge you. If you're typically an extrovert and suddenly you're reclusive, that's a pretty big behavior shift and should draw your attention. And the other major demarcating factor, you might say, is if there are signs of impairment. That is, they're no longer playing field hockey, they're no longer playing basketball with their friends at the park, and they're not going to school and their grades are dropping, and you have other kinds of problems, and you have a kid who's behind closed doors, the significance of that behavior changes. So you have to evaluate the meaning of the behavior in a context. So if someone has a rough day and they took a test, a lot of kids just took the ACTs, and they came home and they closed the door and they turned on their music and faced chatted, snap, kicked, whatever it is that they're doing, then that would make sense, right? But if it's in the context of impairment, where there's a safety concern or the child is unable to do the stuff that he or she has been doing, then that's really a sign that we need to perhaps take action and seek further help.
Now, when it comes to indications of a mental illness, what are some of the concerning behaviors?
So behavioral health is a tricky and complicated field for this whole reason that we're talking about, that all of the behaviors that can ultimately cluster as syndromes that need attention medically or psychotherapeutically are normal. Everyone gets blue, everyone gets sad, everyone gets anxious for a test or a performance. A lot of people drink, they drink socially. Some people watch their weight and want to look a certain way. It is when these problem behaviors cross a line, and how you draw that line is a matter of scientific inquiry all the time. But how you draw that line is the most tricky and the most important part of behavioral medicine. So the signs and symptoms to look for in teens suggestive of mental illness most commonly are depression and anxiety, which genetically are very similar. Depression in teens, as I alluded to earlier, tends to look like prolonged period of irritability, low mood, and what we call anhedonia, or a lack of interest in the things that the kid used to like to do. That then, when it's coupled with difficulties concentrating, low energy, problems with sleep, and thoughts of self-harm, constitute a clinical syndrome that we call adolescent depression. Adolescent depression is very, very treatable. It is highly heritable. And the literature has exhaustively looked at best ways to treat adolescent depression. And the best way to treat adolescent depression is a combination of psychotherapy and medication interventions. Now, when to do meds, when to do therapy, all becomes a question that is a case-by-case question that gets answered by a qualified mental health care professional. And to make that decision, you hope that your teen can be evaluated by someone, certainly a licensed mental health practitioner, and ideally you would start with either a child and adolescent psychiatrist or psychologist so that you can diagnostically get a clear sense of what is going on, because in addition to depression, there are many coexisting disorders that can be sometimes tricky to suss out and know exactly what's going on. With respect to anxiety, the most common forms of anxiety that our kids suffer with is persistent worry, or what's called generalized anxiety disorder. And in generalized anxiety disorder, kids are anxious, worried, nervous, scared for a prolonged period, probably about 6 months, and typically it's associated with some somatic complaints. They have persistent abdominal discomfort, they have headaches, stuff like that. And that's a very common presenting complaint to my practice and to a lot of people's practices, unexplained belly pain in young kids. But in adolescents, a lot of worry, checking, make sure the homework is done and complete, and some obsessive symptoms can cluster in there. Not necessarily that would meet threshold for a diagnosis of OCD, which is an anxiety disorder, but obsessively worrying and ruminating is a sign of anxiety. And anxiety and depression very, very often co-occur because genetically they're so similar. And just like depression, there's been exhaustive studies of how to treat adolescent anxiety, and there are FDA-approved medications and evidence-based psychotherapies to treat anxiety. So these are solvable problems, and if you guys out there in your viewerships, in the ships, are suffering, don't suffer alone. Please reach out for help and speak to your pediatrician and speak to your primary care physician and speak to people you know who've been through this, and find someone who can be helpful.
And now, how do parents talk to their teenagers about what some of their concerns are?
Oh,
It's a hard one.
super duper hard. Here's the best hint. The best hint is to be gentle and to be validating. Those are the two things that if I could influence in any way anyone's approach to talking to a teen about a mental health condition, probably about everything, but in particular about a mental health worry or concern, to be gentle and validating. So what does that mean? That means that you're going to carve out some time and you're going to speak in a low tone, and you're going to do it not when the younger sister has ballet and dad's coming home in a bad mood and late, but rather you're going to, if you're the father or you're the mother, you're going to carve out a few minutes and you're going to say, is this a good time to talk? And they're going to say no. And then you're going to say, when's a good time? And then you say, okay, let me circle back. And you follow up. You sit down and say, look, I've been noticing blah, blah, blah. And I love you and I care about you. And I wanted to hear a little bit about it. And you can expect that the teen will not tell you anything. And that's okay. And when they tell you nothing, you then kick into the validating stance where you say something like, it might be hard to talk to me about this. I get that. I get that. When people feel understood, they feel better. I get that you don't want to talk to me about that. Would you be willing to talk to someone else? Because I'm pretty concerned. So that's a good first pass.
That's really great information. Is there anything else you just want to say on the topic of, talking to your teens about this, or kind of figuring out when you need to seek professional help?
The things I'm seeing in my practice, and the things that are really impacting teens now, are not just depression, anxiety, and other psychiatric conditions, but substance use and eating disorders are highly, highly prevalent. And those illnesses are sneaky kind of illnesses, because there's a lot of shame bound in substance use and in eating disorders. So I see quite a lot of that. And I also see patterns of relational aggression and bullying at school contributory to some of the underlying vulnerabilities that these kids have. And finding a way to successfully negotiate with schools about issues of relational aggression, that's being excluded. It's not quite meeting criteria for bullying, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like being excluded or being passed over when you're picking teams, that sort of thing. And then frank bullying, those social perpetuating factors for teens are worthy of keeping tabs on as parents. So I urge everyone to be involved. I urge everyone to try to stay connected. And it's tough to be. The most important thing I'm going to tell you is it's tough to be a teen. Mm-hmm. It's tough to be a teen, and I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to say it's tough to be a teenage girl. And the pressures on our young women are beyond. Guys, I'm sorry, but the pressures on young women to look a certain way and to behave a certain way and have a certain friend group and be, everything to everybody all the time is so much pressure. And to the extent that parents can alleviate some of that pressure at home, I really hope that they can, because our kids are just under so much pressure.
And as you said, help is available if it's needed.
Help is available. Here at Silver Hill, we have a variety of inpatient and outpatient programs, and there are providers in the community. And I would be happy if people wanted to email me. All you have to do is Google Krasner, Krasner, and Silver Hill Hospital, and I can kind of point you in the right direction.
Dr. Krasner, thank you so much. Great information. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, you can find more of our coverage in our partnership with Silver Hill Hospital this month at han.network. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much to Silver Hill Hospital for working with us all this month to raise awareness about mental health. You can watch more of those interviews at han.network. We're going to wrap things up on your coffee break. Coming up at 12:30, though, CT Pulse with myself and Josh Fisher. We have Christine Stewart of CT News Junkie joining us to talk some big state stories. And, of course, Nutmeg Sports at 2, and then baseball at 4. Staples at Danbury, so be sure to check that out. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 for your coffee.